How come your parents did not follow that trend?
Both of my parents struggled with drug addiction. So from an early age, my parents were struggling with addiction. And my dad was in the roofing business, mainly because I think a lot of people can probably relate to this. Once you get a felony on your record, construction is kind of the trades that funnels into.
Look at me, habibi. Dubai Jeep, let's get it. Look at me, habibi. Dubai Jeep, let's get it. Bags expensive.
Don't touch me. Back it up, back it up, back it up, back it up. No, I have to back it up, back it up, back it up, back it up.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Stroke of Success Podcast, your favorite host, KB. Today's guest is special. Today's guest is someone I met recently at the RiseCon conference in Tampa, Florida. Me and my wife were sitting there together. By the way, it's my wife's first self-development conference, so she loved it. And next thing you know, they have three gentlemen and a nice female sitting on the panel. And each one of these individuals had an amazing story. What got to my wife and I when this gentleman talked about going to med school and opting out, what I learned from his story was to never give up. And this guy went through a shitstorm, pardon my French. He went to hell and back, and he stuck through it. So today, welcome Rene Diaz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rene, for doing this. Rene Diaz is from Roof X.
Yes, sir.
That's the company you own.
Currently, yes.
And we're going to get into the details of it. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
You know, that one of the biggest benefits, I'll name a few of them, benefits of going to these conferences. Have you gone to many?
I have not. Actually, I missed the first RiseCon. That was my first time going.
Last year, I missed it, right?
Funny thing is, first time going, I ended up getting on that panel.
So I've been a few. I went to the Patrick Bet-David Walt. That happens here at Fort Lauderdale.
I'm thinking about going to that this year.
You must go. And I'll give you my contact number there. She's one of the representatives. She'll hook you up. You have to go there. I mean, that's up your alley as well. Number one, that's one and then I went to a few other ones, but Patrick's one is one of the best ones. And then Vic, our boy, Tippins, I think his name is. Tipnis, yeah. What I find from them, you have a lot of inspiration. The ideas just pop up, right? Different thought process, and the networking.
I met a lot of people at Rice Conference.
I saw that.
Yeah.
You're like a celebrity on the floor.
I know. It was very odd for me.
Yeah. You told me you're an introvert.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But I know how to turn on my extrovert when it comes to making money.
Interesting. Was that always the case?
No, I think it develops out of necessity.
Yeah.
So
the funny thing is, man, you mentioned that a bunch of times on stage. Like I was thinking twice of doing this. Remember you said that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was. It's not very natural to want to step on stage in front of 1,000+ people.
Yeah.
So I had to work on my brain.
Yeah.
To get myself ready to do it.
By the way, I think Karan, one of the gentlemen next to you, and John said it to you on stage that you're doing great. I could not tell, just for feedback, to get you feedback, I could not tell that's your first time on stage.
A lot of people said that, and I think it's part of the reason I was more comfortable than not is because I truly believe what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I've lived it. I've got 10 years of scars and
stripes,
battle stripes to prove it.
Battle stars.
I think when you're very nervous about doing something, it's because maybe you don't have the battle stripes to back up what you're saying, and your words are empty. And so, I think that's what helped me get through it.
Yeah, you're right. That's a really good point. You've lived through it. Yeah. So I have so many different directions I can take this. So let's start from the beginning. I like to get in the childhood of the person. So you're young, relatively young. I'm 42. You're about 10 years younger than me.
Correct.
Interesting.
34.
Yeah, 34. Where you were born?
Born in Tampa.
Okay.
Born in Tampa. Grew up in Riverview till I was probably in about, I'd say 7th grade.
Riverview is near Tampa. Is a city outside of Tampa?
Riverview is a suburb of Tampa.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, I went to school in Tampa. I didn't tell you that. I went to USF.
Okay, that's where I graduated.
Okay. You're a bull like me.
Yes, sir.
What year did you graduate?
2015.
I'm 2010. Okay. Okay. You're after me. So, born in Tampa, born to a wealthy family.
My grandfather is wealthy. It depends on what you want to call wealthy, right? I'd say my grandfather's worth $15 or $20 million, but he's also 88 years old, and it's a lifetime of making investments and working, and so he's always been successful and wealthy. But no, my personal family is not. My mother and father are not wealthy.
Mm. Your grandfather is wealthy. Even at 80 years old, $15 million is still good money.
Sure,
Right.
He's wealthy.
How come your parents did not follow that trend?
Both of my parents struggled with drug addiction. So, from an early age, my parents were struggling with addiction. And, my dad was in the roofing business mainly because I think that, and a lot of people can probably relate to this, once you get a felony on your record, construction is kind of the trades that everybody funnels into. And so that's kind of, my dad was actually, backing up, my father was an Olympic athlete. So my father, prior to drugs, was very type A, very laser focused, has about 5 black belts, was in the Olympics for kickboxing when he was 18, flew to Germany for that. So he was a very different human prior to that. Very talented, could have made millions of dollars fighting on the big stage.
Wow.
One of the most talented people I've ever seen in martial arts or kickboxing, but couldn't control the addiction.
When did he get addicted?
I believe it started around the time I was born. So around that time, I think he was 24, and my mom was probably 18, 19.
Young. Your mom was young. Both are young.
Mm-hmm.
Both were young.
Yep.
Okay. So this is about so you're about 10 years. So you're born in 93, 94?
89.
89, okay. Mm-hmm. The 80s, okay. Do you know how he got addicted? I mean,
I think it was just in that late 80s, early 90s. I think that it was kind of commonplace. It was a lot more commonplace back then than it is today, or more accepted.
Right.
And I think that, too, my grandparents were big players in the drug trafficking. My grandmother actually did 2 years in federal prison for trafficking and selling large amounts of cocaine and marijuana. They'd actually fly down to Colombia and bring back bales of marijuana and massive kilos of cocaine. So my dad was exposed to that at an early age, and he told me stories that they used to actually play video games sitting on bales of marijuana, 100-pound bales. So they were very wealthy when my father was a kid because they were in the drug game, and they had a big ranch in Lithia, had horses, and my dad really never had to worry about money because it was not an object. They wanted to go to Disney, they'd hand him $10,000. It was...
What city was your dad raised in?
My dad was born here.
So your whole family's been...
He was born in Tampa.
Okay. Wow.
My grandparents came over from... I believe my grandmother came from Cuba early when she was young with her parents.
Wow. Both of your grandparents are Cuban, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, this is like the Pablo Escobar time, flying kilos of cocaine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Florida, right?
Yep. But see, I didn't know my grandparents like that. My grandparents were, to me, they were my grandparents, right? They had put that life behind them by the time I knew them. But that's how my dad was raised. So, very commonplace. My father tells me stories. My grandmother used to have some addictions herself. So he grew up around that, and I guess it transferred over in some way.
What was the first? How old were you when you first saw your dad using, like, knowing
I don't think, I never saw my dad using until I was about 16.
Okay.
He wasn't using in front of me. It was more or less, I'm going to leave for, it was just disappear. 2 or 3 days, disappear. Phone off.
No idea where he's at.
Nope. Phone off, not answering the phone. Come back, 3 days later. Sorry. That kind of thing.
And your mom was like at home waiting for him, or she's also using?
So my mom and dad divorced when I was about 2 or 3.
Wow.
So it wasn't so much that I was really getting to see that, when I was young. It's just brief things I can think back to now that trigger, like, okay, I know what they were doing, or I know what's going on. But they were divorced, I think, probably when I was 2 or 3 years old. So it wasn't so much them together. It was my dad on his own and my mom on her own. And they both had separate marriages after that, and so on. So, and periods of singleness. So it was getting to see it from both sides. I lived with my mom until I was probably 12. And the first time I went to go live with my dad, I was 12 years old, 6th grade. I moved from Riverview to Weewawahitchka, Florida, a little town in the Panhandle. And I lived there for all of my 6th grade year. And that's kind of where I got so I talked about my love for the outdoors. That's kind of where I got my introduction to the outdoors, hunting. When you move from a big city to a little rural town, that's all they do there is hunting and fishing is like a way of life, right? And so I got my first introduction to that when I moved there, and it kind of just stuck with me. Also sports, played sports as well.
I can't get over the fact that, that much money, he's that young sitting on a pile of bags of weed, marijuana, playing video games.
Yeah. My grandparents were kingpins. That was how my dad was raised. They were millionaires in the, I guess in the 80s,
Did you see it?
80s.
Did you enjoy that money when you were growing up?
I did not, because, shortly after that, I think probably before I was born, they were raided by the federal, the FBI or the feds, and my grandmother did 2 years in federal prison. So after that, they left Tampa. They moved to Chipley, Florida, relocated and started living a different life altogether.
I think it was Reagan as a president, and he had a very aggressive program against drugs.
Yep.
I think I'm assuming that's the same time she got. So
I didn't know my like I said, I didn't know that side of my grandparents. Yeah.
You heard stories.
I knew they were very open.
Yeah, they shared it.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So dad is an addict, mom has issues. This is a troubled household.
It was. It was troubled.
Dysfunctional.
Dysfunctional, yes. But I think that when you see people that are successful, right, either they allow the dysfunction and the trouble to take them down a bad path and never recover from it, or they use it as fuel and motivation to be better, right? And I think that I used to use it. It used to piss me off, just seeing the constant relapse and playing the same movie over and over again, year after year. It pissed me off. And so, first it makes you sad, and then it pisses you off, and then you say, fuck that. I'm not going to live my life that way.
You make a choice.
Yeah, I'm not going to live my life like that. And I will eventually get to the point where now I don't have to rely on them, and I can make my own choices, right?
Yeah, but that's a very mature way of thinking.
Yeah.
So you had to grow up earlier, you think?
Absolutely. So my mom went through a hard divorce probably when I was 14. So I lived with my dad at 12. I moved back to come back with my mom after that. And around 14, my mother went through a divorce with my stepdad. And so she went down a downward spiral for about a year and a half. And I was with her through the whole thing.
You saw it.
Yep. And I was like, you know what? Can't deal with this anymore. So I went back, lived with my dad. And it was probably only another year with my dad. And same thing with my dad. He went through his divorce.
And that was his downward spiral.
That was his downward spiral. That was his last hurrah. Yeah, he went through that. And, I mean, it got pretty bad to the point where his wife was serving us an injunction, and we were kicked out of our own house. And, you know, my dad was so screwed up at the time. He had jobs going. My dad was a roofing contractor. He had jobs going on and things happening, and was just so out in left field he didn't even care. He literally, I remember saying, you know, I had a good friend of mine they're like my second parents, his parents. And so I was always over there when I was in Weewall, and, you know, that's where I stayed a lot of the times. But after this happened, I was like, Dad, we got to get our own place. You know what I mean? And so he was so out of it. He literally hands me like $5 or $6 grand and is like, sure, just go rent us a place. I was 15 or 16. So I go down to the real estate office as a barely legal driver and tell the realtor that I need to find a place to rent. Of course, I didn't share all the details, but
You knew not to.
yeah.
15 years. Dude, so the thing is, what I'm getting, your father didn't have a shortage of money.
At that time, no. He was making, you know, I'd say he was easily making $300,000 a year.
Take a net on
Bring home.
oh wow.
Yeah, he was
Probably picking 1.5, 1.2
well
for the year? Gross?
Gross, yeah. He was a roofing contractor, but he was subcontracting labor. He was a labor subcontractor. So he had his own license, but he was the guy that big companies hired to come in and do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was good at it. He was very good at it. So we had money, you know, or we had money when, you know, we were not broke by any means. The brokenness came when the drugs took over and the divorce hit and the drugs were a part of the marriage the entire time. It was just, you know, oh, well, I'm going to go out and binge for 2 or 3 days. Now I'll be good for a month or 2 months, and then I'm going to do it again. It was this up and down cycle. But when the divorce hit,
That was it.
it was done. Yeah, it was every week. It was constant.
It wasn't daily at that time? No.
You know, it probably was.
You probably didn't know.
It probably was.
Yeah.
I mean, but it, like I said, he kept it away from me. He
Yeah.
tried to keep it out of my face.
Yeah.
'Cause he knew that, I mean, me and him, we had it out. I mean, like it almost came to blows.
Son and father, father and son.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it almost came to blows many times. And, you know, I love my dad, but I was very pissed off about
Anger.
Yeah.
Resentment.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. And
What exactly for?
what'd you say?
What was the exact anger, resentment for? What specifically you would say?
Just felt like I couldn't live my life like a normal kid.
He's interfering with that.
Sure.
Pardon my language, but he's fucking with your childhood.
Absolutely.
Your teenage years.
Yeah. I was very big into baseball.
Wow.
I actually wanted to play baseball in college.
That was your thing.
That was my thing. And I had some friends that actually did end up getting full scholarships to play ball in
They
college.
went far.
What'd you say?
They went far into
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah, they did. One of them
journey.
actually got drafted.
Okay.
And they would tell you that when we played together, I was probably better than them.
Way better, probably.
You know, when we were 8th, 9th grade, you know, I was a 3 and 4 hitter on my baseball team. I was younger than everybody else, but I was the guy that always was a 3-4 hitter. I was a pitcher. I was a catcher. And so did I have talent to play in the pros? No. But did I have talent to get a scholarship to play in college?
And get far. I mean,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, you're living your best potential, right? I mean,
Right.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I felt robbed of that because, those two buddies of mine stayed at the same school that I ended up having to leave because of my mother's divorce. And both of them went on. You know, one of them went to St. Leo. The other one went to, I think, something Southern over in Lakeland. Can't remember the name of it. But point being, they both got full ride scholarships playing sports. And
Here you are.
here I am, 16 years old, being forced my junior year. I think it was the end of my sophomore year, being forced to move to another city with my aunt and uncle.
Because of his antics.
Well, both of them.
You both of them. Mom and dad both.
First, my mother got me to him, and then he got me
to your other uncle.
Yep.
The visual I'm saying is both of your friends went away for school for baseball?
Well, they played. It was the schools are local.
Yeah,
okay. Tampa, right? But both of them got full scholarships, lived on campus, and didn't pay for college. Yeah, I had a great experience.
I'm just seeing one friend going this direction, one going here. The smoke settles, and you're there by yourself with this anger. Like you could have been in that direction.
Sure. If I had stayed at that same school with them, I would have ended up likely with the same. 3 of my friends that played on that team went and got scholarships and played baseball in college. They would tell you that would have been me as well. I was actually out of all 4 of us. 2 of us were selected to play on the All-Star game against the East and West Conference. We played in a Christian conference here, and I went to Grace Christian in Valrico. 2 of us got selected to play in that All-Star game, me and Mr. Jeffrey Goldsberry. Okay, the other 2, very good players, but at that time they did not get selected because it was selected. There was only 2 people from each team that could go. So me and Jeff got selected. Jeff went to school on a full ride scholarship, didn't pay $1 for his college education. He's a doctor now. Played baseball for 4 years. But, being stable when you're in college or in high school is super huge because colleges want to talk to your high school coach. And I didn't have that luxury because I moved. So I left my sophomore year, and my coach loved me. I was one of the key players on the team, but I had no choice but to leave because of the turmoil in my life at the time.
That's bad, man.
Then I had to move to this new area where I don't know anybody, and so you have this social anxiety of leaving everything you've known to go to this new place
because of your mom and dad.
Yep.
So not even social anxiety. Social anxiety is one mixed with this resentment of not following the dream that you had.
Right.
2 things like that to come together. You didn't want to use drugs at that time?
Again, I think that a weak-minded person decides that everything's ruined and life's no good anymore. And
Numb my pain.
I'm just going to go down this path. And I know a lot of people that chose that life and people that have done that. But it's never what I wanted. I used my pain as fuel.
That's not common. I'll tell you my story quickly. Like I had my story. My mom died of cancer. I got into substance abuse in Miami, party scene bad. But a lot of things were happening that kind of pushed me back and forth. It went from using it for partying, then to addictions, right? But man, I couldn't think of what you're saying, to use pain for fuel at that age. So you matured up real quick.
Yeah, when I had to leave Weewall because my dad was so far gone, I moved to a little town called Graceville, Florida. Okay, there's probably one red light in the entire town, and a lot of cows, and that's where I moved with my aunt and uncle. And my aunt and uncle were not much older. They were 10 years older than me, maybe 10, 12 years older than me. So at the time I'm 16, they're 28, 29. So they basically looked at me and they're like, hey, you got to get a job to support.
Pay yourself for yourself, homie.
Yeah, you got to pay for we're going to give you a roof and we're going to give you dinner.
Food, one meal.
Yeah.
Makes sense, right? I get it.
You need to pay. I wasn't their kid either. You know what I mean? No. So, but they were there for me. And, they were like, you need to get a job because you're going to need money for gas. You're going to need money to pay your insurance,
Yeah.
All these new changes that you're not used to, this is what it's going to be like now. What
was your thought at that time for life? What do you plan to do?
I knew that I needed to do well in school. That was a top priority for me.
Okay.
I knew that getting good grades staying, National Honor Society, trying to be as academically successful as I could was going to be my ticket to college at that time. And I was still playing baseball. I got on the team at Chipley High School where I graduated from, and I played baseball. But it goes back to I was a new guy in a small town where all of those kids grew up playing baseball together with the same coach. So when you're the new guy in a very small town, you got to prove yourself, right? And sometimes that's not even enough because there's such thing as politics and favoritism right, that comes into play. And so I dealt with a lot of that. It got pretty bad, actually. I never had parents at the games at that time or, family members talking to the coach and saying, why is my kid not playing? There's a lot of that stuff that goes on, especially at the high school level. And so it was easier to kind of discard me than it was to discard somebody else who had parents at the ball games or parents working in the school as teachers, right? I was the new guy. It was easier to kind of set me aside, and that's kind of how it was my first year. I was very angry about it because I had come from being a very highly regarded baseball player, where I came from, and then I'm in this new school now, and I'm
starting at the beginning.
Yeah, it's like no one knows who you are at all.
You're a big fish in a small pond. Now you're a small fish, a different pond.
Yep.
You're good in school, studying.
Very good. Yeah, I graduated. I believe I graduated high school with like a 3.9 GPA or something like that.
Even with all this turmoil, all this hoopla going on, circus in the background, quote unquote, still good.
Yeah, and not because I was just naturally gifted.
Yeah.
I worked really hard. So I would...
You're a hard worker.
Yep. If I had an exam coming up, I'm going to stay up till 3, 4 a.m., 5, 6, whatever it takes until I felt like I could go in there and ace that test.
This is so I told you my wife's a physician. You met my wife at the show at the RiceCon. A lot of your characteristics remind me of my wife. She's a doctor. So I met her right before she went to medical school, right before she got into medical school. And very similar, a worker, even till now. She works, puts her head down. But back in medical school, like the way you're describing yourself, you were a perfect candidate for medical school. Yeah.
I was, it's funny, actually. I graduated honors college at USF, which if you know anything about honors college, you graduated there. It's a whole different
program.
It's a different program. It's extra classes that you take to get an honors college graduation distinction.
That's right.
You have to get accepted in honors college.
Yeah.
And then when you're in there, you have to maintain to stay. And so I did the entire time. And I graduated USF with honors. I graduated, I think, at 3.87 from
insane.
USF.
Were you working in college?
In the beginning, yeah. And all the way throughout, man.
Yeah.
I was...
Pay for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, loans, grants, scholarships.
Everything.
And working.
All the above. Okay, so we went through high school. We're doing good in school. No drug issues. Having a lot of sex, a lot of fucking.
Definitely did my fair share of that in college.
But nothing out of that's normal for a young, healthy male. But there's a different level of this going out of your mind.
I never let it control.
Yeah. Okay.
Never let it control me to the point where it hindered my success.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, sex was not your demon. Drugs was not your demon. Not alcohol. As of right now, nothing has gotten control of you.
No, I don't let any. So I don't let anything come between me and my goals. So, and if it starts to, then I'll pull back, right? So,
and you're that focused that you know that this is coming closer and closer and closer. That you are that consciously aware.
Yep. At all times. Yeah, you have to. I think if you're going to be successful, you have to be consciously aware of. You have to have self-awareness enough to know when you're derailing yourself or when you're getting off path. Very important. You're not going to be successful if you cannot have self-awareness. You're just not. It's too hard.
That's strong stuff right there. Okay. we're in USF. What was the plan after the USF?
After USF, at that time, the plan was, I'd say in 2013, 2014, my plan was when I finished school, I had several options I was weighing out. One of them was a dual enrollment with the military. I was going to go reserve, Army Reserve, so I could take advantage of the reserve college benefits while also enrolling in ROTC, Reserve Officer Training, so that I wouldn't be deployed. And I was thinking, I can take advantage of college benefits and stipends from ROTC as well as the reserve unit. There's something called simultaneous membership. And that was on the table. I thought about it. And ultimately, I ended up not going that route. But that was something I weighed out. I actually went to MEPS and everything. And when I seen how crazy MEPS was, I decided that probably wasn't my best option.
Okay, so that door closed right there.
Yeah.
What was the next door? What was the next option?
So we thought about going through the Uniformed Services, University of Health Sciences. The military has a medical school in Maryland.
Interesting.
Yes. If you get into it, you get paid the entire time you're in medical school as a captain.
Okay.
So you're a captain in the military, and you get paid a captain's salary plus housing benefits while you're in this military medical school. In exchange, you spend 7 years
after medical school
in the military practicing medicine, and you immediately okay, not as a captain. You go in as a first or second lieutenant.
Okay.
And when you graduate, you automatically promote to captain.
Okay, so you have to do residency. It's a medical program, residency, and then you become a doctor.
Yep.
Right. You do all that, and then you have to serve 7 years after.
So I started weighing all that out, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, we're looking at 8 years minimum. I mean, even 4 years of medical school,
3 years residency,
3 years of residency,
that's 7.
And that's if you're not going to be a surgeon. If you're going to be a surgeon, go ahead and
the 2-3 years, 2 years,
2 or 3 years on top of it.
Cardiologist.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 10 potential years plus 7.
Yeah, 17 years.
17 years gone. So I started weighing that out. And I'm like, okay, let's say I graduated in 2015, my undergrad. That's 9 years ago. It puts me 26 years old. 17, that puts me in my 43 years old before I'm out of the military and could potentially start
making some income,
making real money, or being in a position where I could start my own practice and make a business out of this. And so, man, it was just to think that far out and how far that was going to be. It was definitely daunting thought. And then I started doing some volunteering in the hospitals early on, trying to build my resume. I got my EMT license. I was also a personal trainer. But kind of the volunteering I did in the hospitals and the ER and stuff made me really think twice about medicine. Nobody's ever happy when they come in there. It's very high stress. And so I thought a lot long and hard about it. And
that's it.
I shadowed a couple orthopedic surgeons too.
Did you?
And it's very crazy.
It is.
How busy their day is.
Yeah.
I would literally, that guy would get in the office at 6 o'clock in the morning, maybe even 5:30, and he'd start rounding on patients probably by 7 a.m. And he would not come up for air until that place closed at probably 4:30.
In residency? Was that residency?
That was a private orthopedic practice.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Really, really good friend of mine. One of my best friends is the ortho surgeon in South Florida for Voz. He was working for the Heat for the time LeBron, Wade, and Bosch were together. He was part of that team taking care of them. But I didn't think that it was that busy. I didn't know that they worked that much.
Very, very busy. It was actually
established practice.
Very established. This
there
guy
you go.
Been in business for 30 years. Yeah. He was one of the best, but just seeing that level of constant on the go, one door to the next, no breaks. Some of the files he would look at were the size of a phone book. And I remember asking him, I said, what are you going to do with that? And he said, I'm going to read over this tonight. And I was thinking to myself, it would probably take me the next 2 weeks to read that. Obviously, he's going to skim it. But that was just one patient. He probably saw 30 in that day.
You have any idea how much he's making back then?
How much the doctor was making? I have no idea, but I have a good friend that is a cardiothoracic surgeon, heart surgeon at University of Florida. I'm actually installing his roof in the next couple of weeks. They're building a house in Jacksonville. It's actually a friend of one of my very good friends, alumni at Grace. He's the brother of my very good friend Randy Belly, alumni at Grace. His name's Errol Belly. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon at University of Florida, and I believe
I know what it, but go ahead.
$700,000 to $900,000 a year is what I'm thinking.
A little less, I think.
What'd you say?
I think a little less. I think so.
And that's he's like
a partner, maybe.
He's the top guy.
Got it. Cool.
He runs the program.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
wow.
Even as big as he is and as accomplished as he is still sub $1 million.
That's insane. 50% goes to tax, right? 40% goes to tax.
Absolutely, especially when you're in medical and you're making paychecks like that. You don't have anything to hide the money in.
Nothing.
You don't have write-offs, right? So like in business, I can hide my money in.
Not hide.
I won't say hide it.
Yes, we have expenses.
I can
as entrepreneurs.
I can expense my money. I can invest my money in things.
Yeah.
You know, there's other avenues to expense income.
Sure.
In ways that benefit you, while at the same time reducing your tax liability.
Yes, I have. I'm Pakistanis. A lot of us are doctors, or we own 7-Elevens. That's just a joke I make, or gas station. But like 3 or 4 of my good friends are cardiologists, and that same complaint they all have. KB, help me. You're the businessman. You're the entrepreneur. Help us way to. I tell them real estate. Real estate is for them, for doctors.
You can't beat depreciation.
Yes.
And I'll tell you something that I don't see a lot of people doing, but for me, it's been a game changer. I talked about it at RiseCon. I developed a office flex space, a steel building complex in Tampa.
That's awesome.
And what a lot of people don't realize about flex space and steel buildings is you can accelerate depreciation on a metal building.
Yeah.
You can't do it on brick and mortar.
No.
So on a metal building, you can do what's called a cost segregation study, and you can accelerate that depreciation. So say it costs you $1.5 million to build that building, you can write a significant portion of that $1.5 million off in your first year.
Yeah. That's insane.
Instead of a 39-year period on brick and mortar.
I didn't know that.
It's huge.
That's why you're my buddy from now on. So hold on. So you got a good idea what's happening in the medical world. Right, you shadow someone.
Yeah,
but you're a smart guy. You know what's happening. All right, so no, that's an X on that option. Put that to the side. What was the next option?
Well, that's kind of where I was scratching my head, and so it's funny how I ended up in the roofing space. 'Cause I never wanted to be in the roofing business. It was the last on my list. I watched my dad do it. And I remember...
individual that you despise in a way. Let's be honest, right?
At this time.
At that time, right?
Yeah. And so I'd watch my dad in the roofing space, and I thought to myself, you know, I was always surrounded by people that had substance problems.
Criminal backgrounds.
Criminal background. If you're in construction, a lot of those, let's just call it what it is. A lot of people in the construction space, not everyone, but a very
large
majority of people have some kind of background or past, and so that's what I was around as a kid, and also that work is very hard. Being in the roofing space is very hard work. Okay, when you start the business, you're not just sitting behind a desk wearing a polo, right? When you start it, your hands are in it. You're physically going to job sites. For me personally, I was running dump trailers, pulling permits, selling jobs, on top of roofs, managing crews. You're doing all this stuff, okay, when you start. And to be honest, when I first started with my dad, we were physically doing the labor, subcontracting. So we were not even
subbing it out.
Yeah, we were physically putting roofs on. We were not even at the point where we had built a brand enough where we could sell jobs ourselves.
Yeah. Down the road. Okay, so the picture of that's not that attractive. Medicine is like, look, let's be honest. You're Cuban. A lot of Cubans are they come from Cuba that they're hardworking and they become doctors. I'm from Miami, so in Miami, a lot of humans I came across were doctors. Right. Same as Indian Pakistanis. So that's the picture in your head. I'll have this name. I'll be socially accepted. Clean job, being a physician. That's one option. And here, the roofing, not that clean. No one knows roofers. No one talks about roofers. It's not sexy.
No,
Right.
roofing is kind of looked at. In fact, I talk about this a lot. People hear the word roofer and immediately think of a guy with dirty tar in his pants
Yes.
and
That's
a
what
a tar bucket and a spatula.
Yeah.
But everyone thinks of a roofer. And those roofers do exist, right? That is the roofing trade to an extent, but that's just a small piece of it. There's so much more. There is so much more to roofing than what people think. It's, when I got involved in it too, I was naive and thought, well, how hard can it be? It's just roofing, right? There's a lot involved when you talk about different roof types, commercial versus residential. There's tons of codes. I mean, taking that test, I wheeled in a set of books that was probably, if I stacked them up, they're 4 foot tall or more. There's a lot to know about roofing in the state of Florida. It is definitely not cut and dry, and it's not always easy. And I think that people get the wrong idea, and they think that, well, a roofer is just a guy with tar. No. There's roofers that do $150 million a year in revenue, right? There's a lot of roofers are multimillionaires.
I know. I'm learning that. I never knew that.
Right.
Like plumbers, these blue collar jobs.
All these blue collar jobs.
They really
it's not
well.
just roofing, HVAC.
Yeah, HVAC.
plumbing,
My dad
electrical.
did HVAC. He's
But
retired.
I feel like any business
Yes.
has the capacity
Sure.
to be that.
Of course.
That's what you make of it.
Make of it. Exactly. From real estate, from opening a med spa, anything you do. Okay, so we chose roofing.
We chose roofing because roofing chose us first out of necessity. And then we grew roofing to a point where it was senseless to take the business that had already grown to about $1 million a year by the time I graduated college and just set it aside to go chase something else that wasn't necessarily a passion. See, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. My reasons were purely financial. I was
To become a doctor.
sure. I certainly wanted to help people, but at the same token, I was thinking, how do I make myself super financially successful so that I can buy my time back, I can build wealth, and I can create the life that I want, right? That's something we all think about when we're going to college. What are we going to do? Which career are we going to pick that's going to afford us the financial prosperity to live the life that we want to live eventually? And so I feel like that so many young people right now are dealing with that. And I would not want to be dealing with it today in 2024. I think our economy is certainly not great right now. But, and two, I think the one thing I don't think a lot of people talk about, there's a lot of competition. There is a lot of competition today. We see it in the roofing space. There is way more roofers in the roofing space today than there was 10 years ago. Competition is fierce. We constantly have to, go up against companies that are willing to do work for less. And so you really have to grind and set yourself apart in the workspace.
Yeah.
Because competition is more fierce today than it was.
They're right after you. Yeah, I'm learning that in the med spa world, in the aesthetic world. I mean, same thing. The competition all over. But Patrick Bet-Davis said something really strong. He goes, "You have to outwork, out-strategize,
and outlast.
the three of them."
Outlast. And I think I'm coming into that season at RoofX where we're starting to outlast, right? And there was a lot of times I wanted to give up. It's very difficult. It's very hard when you're starting out, because when you're starting out, you don't have the financial means to say, no, I'm not going to take that job because the profit margin's not quite what I want it to be.
You can't.
You have to take what you have to take in order to pay your bills.
And eat.
Yeah. And so, but there comes a point where you have to switch your gear, right? And for me, year after year, I'm grinding through this. And I'm going, man, why am I always so tight when it comes time to pay my supply bills and pay my payroll? Why is it always so tight? Well, you got to look at the numbers, right? You're not selling jobs for enough money. You're taking work that is not as profitable as it should be, right? And then you go look at a company that's really successful, and I go, what am I doing different than them? What are they doing that's so much different than me? Well, it's quality of customer. They're going after a different target customer. And I see this a lot of times with new sales reps we onboard. You'll have sales reps that like to go fishing in what I call the turd pond, right? We could have the ocean over here with beautiful blue marlin, and we have this turd pond over here with little bait fish.
Sure.
Right? It takes the same effort to cast your line into both. But the person that identifies closer with this pond is going to cast their line into this pond instead of going after these marlin over here. It's a confidence thing, right? And I see people do this a lot, and I'll have this discussion. Hey, it takes the same amount of effort to go after these small fish as it does these bigger fish, right? But these bigger fish over here have money to spend. These guys don't. And
That's so funny saying
you're
that.
always coming up short because you're fishing in a pond where frankly, the fish you want are not there.
They're not there.
So,
are you familiar with the law of attraction philosophy?
absolutely, and I believe it's definitely came into my life. Yeah.
What year? How old were you?
How old was I? I could say the last 4 or 5 years. It's been every year. You know, every time I stick myself into a new situation that I don't necessarily have experience in, I'm immersed into a world where I meet different people that, you know, automatically bring me value back, right? So I got into the timber business. I don't know anything about timber. I'm an outdoorsman. I love to hunt, but I'm not a timber guy. Don't know anything about that world, right? But I was able to I bought my first timber property in 2019, March 2019. I picked up 485 acres in Eufaula, Alabama. And so don't know anything about it, but didn't let it stop me from getting involved. And it's just like anything, I think, in life. You have to lead first and do, and then you kind of pick up and become better along the way. You might stumble a little bit.
Sure, you're going to fall.
Yeah, but then you just get back up and keep going. Nothing is going to, like, fatally stop you.
No.
Right? So just keep going, and you pick up and you learn new things, and eventually 5 years goes by, and now you're somewhat of an expert, right? You've been doing it for 5 years.
Yeah.
And 10 years goes by, and you just get better and better.
And better and better. So give me an example of law of attraction for you. You have a story.
Law of attraction.
Revenue, a car,
Okay.
situation, person.
So the way I run my business, we buy new vehicles all the time. We buy new vehicles, and people say, you know, my grandfather, for example, very frugal. Well, I don't know why you buy those new trucks. Well, because when I pull up to a customer's house in my truck that costs $80,000 or $100,000, the customer automatically relates that to success. If I was to show up in an old beater truck
To be frugal.
the customer automatically is forming an opinion about that as well.
Not successful.
Right? You're not successful, or you're going to be cheap.
Yes.
Right? And that's not the type of customer that I want to attract.
Yeah.
I want to provide quality to my customer at a good price, right? But I don't want to have to run myself out of business to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think law of attraction, you're going to always get back
What you put out there.
what you put out.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm like you, man. You know, I've been frugal for many years of my life. Even recently, you know, I made a really good amount of money in real estate in the recent boom we had, 2020, 2019, 2020, 21, 22. And I had this old, it was an okay car. It was more of being frugal. And my wife saw me you're in business and real estate and entrepreneurship.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being frugal.
No.
And I think that at certain times of
You
your
should.
life, you have to be.
You should be.
You have to be. Okay?
Yeah.
And you have to be. And so there was a time where I was.
But depending on your work too, you could, you know, if you have a podcast studio, or if you have a different business that no one cares about what you drive, they care about the studio. This studio here is beautiful, right? But if you're in real estate and part of your job is to drive people around in a car, then I would say, hey, invest in a nice, decent car.
Absolutely, and it's a tax write-off.
There you go.
It's fully tax deductible.
Exactly. Now, if your car doesn't matter and you want to drive an old car to be save invest your money, go for it. You know, sometimes like nice suit. I don't know about you. When I wear a nice suit, my frequency changes. I vibrate on a different level.
Absolutely.
You know,
I never had a tailored suit until RiseCon.
I can. Oh, really?
So
it makes sense.
I had suits.
Yeah.
But I've never gone through the length of having suits tailored for me. And so when I decided to do the RiseCon event, the speaker panel, I said, you know what? I'm going to go buy all new suits.
And look what I did.
Absolutely.
You have a circle around you. You're on a podcast. You probably have 10 more booked after this. People don't have you come on stage after that.
Definitely.
You're probably going to show it to Vic, who is an amazing entrepreneur himself. He himself, the suits, you saw the way he dressed?
Vic dresses very nice.
Like,
never, I don't think there's ever been a time I've seen him in a suit where he looked off.
If you go on his IG in jeans and t-shirt, he's and it shows something, right? But by the way, there are entrepreneurs out there that are not as nicely dressed, that are way wealthier. So for my audience, I'm not saying that you have to dress nice to be wealthy, but in some businesses, it will take you higher, further down.
Sure. And I think, that, like you said, there's a time and a place.
Time and place. I agree with you.
Yep. And I don't always, I don't wear suits to my job, right?
Yeah.
I wear nice jeans and a
collared shirt, a collar shirt, right?
Shoes.
Makes sense.
But, not always slacks.
Yeah.
But I'm in the construction.
You have a vision board?
A vision board.
You got one?
I do have one in my office. It's not filled out right now.
You should have one, man.
But my vision board's here. So it's in my head.
Okay. You visualize, you sit down and visualize your day ahead?
I do.
Okay.
I do. At night, typically
It's the best time to do it, before going to sleep, I heard.
Typically at night, I'll get on my phone and take notes about what I need to accomplish or what's
goals
on my schedule the next day, et cetera. And I try to focus on what I have to do tomorrow.
Sure.
I'm never trying to think 5 days in advance or.
So you're not a long-term thinker?
I am a long-term thinker when it comes
certain
to
things.
Finances.
Okay.
And, financial planning and investments and where I plan to take the business. But in terms of my day-to-day, I try not to overwhelm myself thinking about things that are not on top of me right now. I think that's another thing that people get lost in the sauce with is especially as you achieve a certain level of success, you have to prioritize, right? Because there's always 49 million things coming at you at all times.
Sure.
You have to prioritize what's most important for me to do right now and what can wait. And that is a game that I play every day. Every day I play that game.
Yeah.
So
Do you have a morning routine?
I don't. So I don't have a morning routine. I'll tell you, my morning routine is I get up, I have something to eat, typically just a banana or some oatmeal, maybe some eggs, have a coffee. I think that's the biggest thing in my morning routine is I have a coffee. Yep, either have a cold brew or hot coffee every morning. That's probably the most consistent thing I do every morning, and that has to happen before I
get going.
Start my day. But as far as a morning routine, no.
Affirmations.
I was a gym nut for years and used to go to the gym early in the morning. But as I've gotten further into business, I've realized that going to the gym at night or after work is better for me, just personally, because when I wake up, I'm immediately thinking about business and what has to happen. And typically my phone's already buzzing. And so it's hard for me to go sit in the gym for an hour and focus with intensity when that phone's buzzing.
Unless you go really early, really early.
But for me, it's tough too because I do some of my best thinking at night.
Me and you, bro, same thing.
Okay, and so sometimes I don't go to bed till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Me too.
So waking up at 4:30 or 5 to go to the gym is
me
not
and you
ideal.
similar. What time do you wake up?
Typically, I wake up about 7:30.
Yeah.
So I'm not a super early riser.
Me too.
But I also work longer than most people.
Me too, yeah.
I don't go, like I said, I don't go to bed till usually 12:30 or 1.
Yeah, me around the same wave. My wife gives me a hard time. She's an early riser in medical school and doctor.
And I definitely, I early
respect
rise.
that.
When it comes to fishing or hunting,
you wake
no
up
problem
early.
jumping up out of bed. Right.
But yeah, dude, at night, like I have two small babies. They're 7, 6. Phil knows them really well. I put them to sleep with my wife, watch some TV, put her to sleep. Then I'm on my laptop working.
Yeah.
researching, looking at podcasts, researching my next guest, look at my notes.
It's the only time when things are kind of quiet enough to really focus.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
That's how it is for me. I have probably 60 plus employees, and somebody or something is always calling me
Yeah, they need you.
or pulling me during the day. So
we have about 5 to 8 minutes left, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit. You got the company going. First year when you came on board, what was the revenue?
first year in business.
When you got in?
Okay, first year in business was
Reflex.
while I was in my senior year of college. We did about 980,000.
Okay. Shy of $1 million?
Yep.
What year was that?
2015.
Okay. This is not too long ago, homie.
No, not that long ago. No.
Wow. Okay. Second year?
Second year, I think we went to
1.5?
1.8 million.
I'm close.
Okay.
Third year, about 2.8.
Third year was not that great. We went to 2.2.
Okay.
Okay. Fourth year, we jumped to 3.8. So we went from 2.2 to 3.8. And there were some key hires made in that time that allowed me to get an extension of myself in order to expand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you hit 10 million yet?
Last year, we did 11.8 million.
First year?
That was my first time over 10 million. The
Good for
year
you
prior
guys.
to
Congratulations.
2022, I did 7.5 million.
How many employees the first year?
The first year, it was me and my brother and a crew of guys. I mean,
That's it.
that was it. Actually, the first year, my brother wasn't even there. It was me. It was me and a crew of guys, and my dad occasionally. So, really, no employees. I did it all.
Your dad still around?
What'd you say?
Your dad's still around? Your dad? He's still working with
still
you?
around?
Yeah.
So he is still around. He's been in and out of the business several times. There was a lot of animosity as the business grew, a lot of jealousy. We butted heads pretty hard, especially as the business was sub 5 million. It was, you don't know what you're doing this wrong, I could do it better, all of this stuff, right? But at the end of the day, I was the one that was actually growing the business, reinvesting the money and making all the moves. And he had bounced in and out, was working for other companies. He'd go work for Collis Roofing or ASM Roofing. He lives over here in Claremont, so he worked for a bunch of different companies and would help with side jobs and stuff on the weekends, but really didn't come over here full time. About a year ago, he came over here full time, and he's finally got to the point where we don't butt heads as much anymore because the business we've proven that we know what we're doing and we're growing. So I finally won approval. However, it's still a struggle working with family because they don't think that they have to work 5 days a week and they kind of do what they want to do. And so it's still definitely a struggle.
You still work hard?
I work very hard.
Till this day?
I work harder than I'd say anybody in my company.
Where's the position?
CEO. I work harder than anybody in my company. I'm not physically installing roofs, but there's not anything that passes through my office that I don't know what's going on. I'm involved in everything from, the insurance on the vehicles, the workers' comp.
You don't have a manager for that?
I do. I'm an office manager, but everything still passes through me, right? I'm still the final decision maker as the CEO. I still make all the final decisions on everything large like that. And so while they handle some of the monotonous tasks, I'm still very much involved in checking over things,
Phil, I'm going to go a little bit over. I'll pay you extra. I got you guys.
I'll kick in.
Oh, no, man. We're good. You're good. So, okay. So I'm going to talk about that. So you're still really hands-on.
Currently still very hands-on. Yeah.
Why?
Now I can leave. I don't have to. Why? Because I want to ensure the success of my company. That's why. So people are, you can only clone yourself so much, right? I can find somebody that can do 75% of what I can do, and that's amazing when I can find it. Okay, and I have several people like that. However, they're still employees, and employees still will look out for what's in their personal interest, right? Even the really good ones will still slack in some ways. And so I think it's important to have a grip on your business and know what's going on. I don't think I could ever be an absentee owner.
Yeah.
And I don't care if the business is at $100 million, right? You still have to pay attention, even if it's something as simple as looking over the financials on a weekly or monthly basis. You still need to be paying attention to what's going on. And I think because of my involvement, the business has been very successful in recent years. We an industry standard in roofing is 14 to 17% EBITDA, and I put up 23.8 last year. So we've run a very profitable business model, and part of that is because I am so hands-on with it.
You get coaching?
No, my coaching was 10 years of battle scars and making mistakes, right?
You think about getting a coach, consultant to, get your head checked out, and talk about some stuff, get like Patrick Bet-David office coaching, right? Vic now is going to get in coaching.
I'm going to be in Vic's accelerator program this year because I was actually part of the panel speaker package. So
He's going to give you as a little...
Yeah, so we're going to be doing some content creation, coaching this year, and just he's got this Max Accelerator program that I think basically hits on the 4 pillars of Max Life. So we're going to be going through that for the next year.
He's going to help you with what? It's 4 pillars of what part of your company is going to help you with?
I believe it's the 4 pillars of Max Life. I'm not getting this wrong. I believe it is your business, family, community. I can't remember the 4
Yeah, okay.
pillars.
I'm forgetting too.
Okay.
And he did a one-on-one with you, coaching? I think Vic does. He had a panel.
I think it's
council.
It's a council, yeah. So it's a coaching call with a group, right? So,
interesting.
Yeah, we're going to be. Hopefully, that's going to be starting. I think in the next couple of weeks.
Good for you. It's a good idea. I think you should look into that and also look into maybe into that. I think that one's probably be the best. He's local to you too.
Yep.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. Man. Okay, so you're very much involved. You have an office manager, but I'm an owner of a company. I told you in MetSpot. I'm finally going to hire a office manager part-time, but my wife and I have been very hands-on. I'm learning. I'm working too much in the business, not on the business.
Sure.
And I just hired her recently. Just talking this morning, my office manager Wendy, I felt like liberated. Like, okay, I can look into other locations now. I could look into other situations. You gonna expand out of your area? You gonna go into other areas?
Oh, absolutely.
Where areas looking into?
So we service from Jacksonville to Tallahassee currently.
Okay.
West Palm over to I'd say Naples.
Okay, so you're not Miami. You're not Fort Lauderdale.
No, not opposed to it, but the codes are different, and the sheer traffic and logistics of trying to get anything done down there, it's pretty rough.
It's gotten more insane after COVID.
What's pretty rough about Miami is the same job that we would charge X amount of dollars for here in Tampa, Orlando is 2+ times in Miami. It's just a different market entirely.
So you make that much more money?
Well, and it comes with a higher cost of materials,
of course,
a higher cost of labor.
The margins are probably equal out.
It's going to be the same, It's just basically it's a higher ticket. You're paying more for labor. You're paying more for materials.
Yeah. Is it really worth it in the end?
Yeah. Well, that and it's if something goes wrong, you don't have an established office down there. You're 4.5 hours away, right? So it's something I haven't been in a hurry to do.
Sure.
But now that we're in the middle of this PE merger, we're looking at companies that have multi-locations, at buying them and rolling them under us. And so here in the next 90 days, I could end up with 7 locations in Florida.
Oh, that's amazing. That's insane.
You may have management in place. So it would be a situation where basically we go in and figure out what they're doing right, what they're doing not as well that they could improve on, right? Some of these companies are running 10% EBITDA margins. So they're either not selling jobs that are profitable enough, trying to do way too much volume that's not profitable, or they are burning profits somewhere in the mix.
You're thinking about coaching other entrepreneurs coming up? Would you think about doing that?
It's certainly something I would consider at a later time. I think once I'm completely done with this merger and hit a successful exit.
Talk about the merger. So you guys you're merging, or you've been bought over?
I'm selling equity.
Gotcha.
So I'm selling 59.8% of my company.
Majority.
Yes.
Okay.
In any private equity merger,
You have to.
You have to. Yes. You're not going to maintain majority. Now, there's rare occasions where
Once in a while here and
somebody
there.
will come in and want
Special deal.
a minority ownership, but ultimately, you want someone to come in and buy majority, especially as a platform. I mean, but being able to maintain 40% equity in the business
That's
as a
rare.
platform is very huge.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of upside in that as well.
So it's you and how many partners you have that
I own it 100%.
not the brother, not the dad, no one, nothing.
No, and what we plan to do in this private equity merger, we're allotting 10% of the company for employee stock. So between me and the new investors that make up the board, we will decide who gets stock along the way. We're gonna do a phantom stock basically
Yeah.
for employee retention.
I heard my mentor, Mark Arfron, he owns rehabs, addiction rehab. Addictions is the topic today. And he told me about doing this with my staff at Nor Med Spa
I think it's important to maintain key talent.
in the beginning.
You've got people that, bring a lot to the table
Sure.
and could potentially go start their own companies.
Yeah.
So you have to offer those people. I heard, I can't remember who said this, so I don't know who to credit it to, but someone told me one time, you have to make sure that your dream is so big that your employees' dreams can fit inside,
Sure.
right? And so if your dream's too small and your employees have bigger dreams, they have to go find another place to work or start their own business to fulfill that.
That's amazing. That gets you thinking. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I hope that RoofX is a $150 million business.
It will be.
I hope that we're in 3 or 4 or 5 states. I hope that I'm still the CEO, and hopefully we'll be heading for a secondary exit. But even when that happens, I feel like I will stay on as the CEO.
You believe in God?
I do.
Follow religion? Particular specific?
So I grew up Christian school, right? Went to Christian school.
Mm-hmm.
So had, was in church service Wednesdays and Sundays, and ultimately off and on as a child, went to church on Sundays. Not all the time. There's periods where I did not. But, even growing up, we watched, Father Schuler and Joel Osteen on Sundays. And so definitely believe in God. Definitely believe in God.
Good for you.
So
Married?
I'm not currently
Planning
married.
to?
Eventually.
Kids?
No kids at the moment, but would like to.
Want to be a family man one day?
I think so. Yes.
Someone with your childhood, your upbringing, situation, your chaos that you grew up in. One would think you'll say, no, man, I don't want to bring someone else in the world. And
I think for me, it was, I'm busting my ass. I'm building a legacy, building a lot of wealth. What's it all for? It's kind of the question you think about it, where none of us are getting out of here alive. Everything that we're doing is temporary. And so I think it's important that we add purpose, right?
I love that. I love that. Where can we find you?
My Instagram handle, it's Rene J. Diaz Jr.
You're getting more busy on social media. I like that.
So I haven't focused on social media at all until recently.
At the RiseCon.
At RiseCon, but yes, I'm going to be making content more this year. Hopefully, might start my own podcast.
You should.
Definitely might start that.
I think your brand is amazing. I think you should. We have some ideas I'm talking to you about later, but I think your brand. I mean, you have a story to share. You have a book inside of you. In my opinion, a book is a good idea.
I've thought about that.
Yeah,
thought about it. I didn't realize how many people are looking to hear. They're looking for inspiration. They're looking for hope. A lot of people are fighting similar battles or going through similar trials in their life, and they're looking to hear from people.
Yeah.
Who've been there that can say, keep going, it's okay. And so I got a lot of that feedback after RiseCon.
That's amazing.
And, I went from not wanting to get on that stage and do that to feeling like it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made.
You're probably a big fan of A-Rod coming up there, huh? You being a baseball player?
I was a huge baseball fan.
Yeah.
Definitely
Enjoyed A-Rod?
An A-Rod fan. Yeah.
Who was your other favorite guest from?
My other favorite guest from the event?
We had Tucker.
I think Tucker Carlson would probably be my other favorite guest.
Interesting.
Very much I wouldn't say, for years I've called myself a conservative or Republican. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, me neither.
I think I'm an independent.
Yes, me too. But some policy you look at these days, like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
For me, I'm a very common sense guy, right? I'm fiscally conservative.
Sure.
I think that the government exists to make sure that we're safe and protected as a nation, make sure that we're putting the common good of people, at the forefront. But I don't think the government exists to tell us how to run our lives.
I agree.
I don't think that they exist to correct your personal problems. I think that in this country we need more personal accountability.
Yeah, I agree.
We're living in a time where there's so many people are looking to the government to save them, and it's not going to happen.
No. Well, that's a bag of lies we're being sold. So, anyways, we could talk politics another time. Man, Rene, amazing to have you. We'll do a part 2 soon. So much more to get into. I'm thinking of doing a panel. Have you on it, and probably another 2 or 3 guests, entrepreneurs, and have a set of questions and around the table go around. Staffing, vision, setbacks, all that stuff. I'll call you for that.
I look forward to it. That'd
Awesome.
be awesome.
Thank you, Rene. Thank you for coming on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
How do you do, Phil?